Morning, guys. Let me know if anybody can't hear me. I'm gonna wave hi, and then I'm gonna hide my audio. If I can figure out how. I mean, my not my hide my video. All right. Can y'all see my the amphibian screen? Y'all seeing that?
Yes.
Good. Okay. Just make sure I'm sharing the right screen there. Good morning, guys. I guess not a lot of you joining yet on time, so but I'm gonna go ahead and start. They can join in when they get on. So hope you all had a good week. Um, Still kind of crazy out there, I guess, but hopefully it's getting a little less crazy. Hate to say we might be getting used to this kind of life, but um, I don't I don't know. Hopefully it'll actually go back to normal soon. Um, Let me go ahead and open in a little prayer, and then we'll go ahead and get started. Lord Heavenly Father, I thank you for this week you've given us that once again we may cherish you and your word and study your creation. Um, Pray that you would help everyone at this time that's kind of a amazing, unusual, crazy time, that they would look to you, and that maybe even, Lord, that many may be even drawn to you, um, and to understand their own mortality during this time. Pray for us today that this lesson would go well without any hiccups, and that it would be a blessing and glorify you. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Okay, a few more joining. Morning, you who just joined. We're going to go ahead and jump right in, just finish praying. I'm going to go back since it's been a while. I don't know for y'all, but I can't keep more than one lesson in my head at a time. So I'm going to go jump back to review where we were for Module 13, review the first half a little bit, because your test that you'll be coming up, it'll be over the whole module. So, and it's been a while, and I almost forgot even teaching this. So hopefully I did teach this and I just forgot, but if I didn't, this is a quick review. The Module 13 was a start of the phylum Chordata, and that's kind of more. We're still in the kingdom Animalia. Well, okay, so we were doing the kingdom Plantae. Now we're back to the kingdom Animalia, and we had started this earlier in Module 12, and now we're jumping back to it in the second half of Module 13. So the Chordata, phylum Chordata, is also synonymous pretty much with the vertebrates. We studied in 11 and 12, I think, or the invertebrates. And obviously the difference between the two is the vertebrates have some sort of backbone. And notably, there is only one phylum in kingdom Animalia that is all the vertebrates. So phylum Chordata are vertebrates. There's only one phylum that are vertebrates. All the rest of the phylums in kingdom Animalia are invertebrates. So again, the idea of the phylum Chordata is that they all have some kind of vertebrae or a backbone. And there's three types. There's there's three subphylums within that. And it is basically divided by what they call the notochord, and when each group has the notochord. A notochord, they're all of them have a notochord at some time in the phylum Chordata, but some of them retain the notochord their whole life, and those are your Cephalochordata subphylum. There's some that have it only in the larval stage, and that's your Urochordata. And we looked at those real briefly. And then there's the subphylum Vertebrata, which is, they have a notochord very early in development, but before birth or hatching or whatever, they form a backbone, and it could be out of bone or cartilage, but they form, the notochord basically disappears before birth. And that's the main one that we're going to look at today. But the other two are still considered vertebrates. So they're all still in the Chordata phylum. So we looked at the vertebrates in the subphylum Vertebrata, and the common characteristics, again, not only do they have the notochord that disappears early and becomes a backbone, but they have their entire endoskeleton. They have an entire endoskeleton, I should say, that maintains structure of it, instead of any other kind of like in the Urochordata and the Cephalochordata, some have external what do you call them, like sheaths, or that basically form the structure of those organisms. The Vertebrata have an endoskeleton, basically means inside skeleton, right? And it can be out of bone or cartilage. They all have a closed circulatory system in the Vertebrata subphylum, meaning, there isn't any blood flowing in any open cavities. It's all within veins and arteries. They have considered a complex nervous system. The nervous system's, controlled by a brain, and they also have separate sexes, male and female. As far as the bone structure of the Vertebrata, we discussed a little bit about the different kinds of bony tissue. You got your spongy bony tissue, and you got your compact bony tissue. They have a bone marrow that produces red blood cells and white blood cells. So if you think about it, and if you look at the picture on page 397, you can even see, like, it actually has blood vessels going into your bone. I mean, sometimes we think of a bone that we see as just dead tissue, but it's not at all. It's living tissue with, the osteocytes, osteoblasts, and osteoclasts. I mean, those are living cells. They do form this this trabeculae, or this bony tissue that is like calcium based, but within all that there's living cells, so it's kind of cool. And then within they need a blood supply, right? Even the bone cells need blood supply to give it nutrition and everything. So if you think about it, if you have a live bone, if you break your bone when you're just even if you don't break your skin or anything like that, you'll bleed. It will bleed. Sometimes you just don't think about that a bone can bleed, but it sure can. And so yeah, that's the main characters of bones. So this, and then the circulatory system. We discussed the circulatory system last time as well. Oh, hang on, I keep forgetting to admit people here. All right. The circulatory system is composed, of course, the arteries and veins, the heart, and capillaries. And we talked about how arteries carry blood away from the heart. So arteries away, and veins carry blood to the heart. So that's just always remember that, and you won't get mixed up. Don't try to think of arteries have oxygenated blood and veins have deoxygenated blood, because there's an exception to that rule, right? When it goes through to the lungs, like in people, when you got blood going from the heart to the lungs, that's actually deoxygenated blood, but those are still arteries. So the pulmonary artery takes blood away from the heart to the lungs and brings back nice oxygenated blood back to the heart through the pulmonary vein. So again, always, veins go to, arteries away. Vertebrata can have a 2-chambered, 3-chambered, or a 4-chambered heart. And we'll discuss a little bit more in detail on some of those this today. Another characteristic of vertebrata is about the nervous system being complex and controlled by a brain. And there's several parts that go into that. You have the different parts for the brain, like the olfactory lobe, the optic lobe for eyes, the olfactory lobe, of course, for nose, and your cerebrum, which is your main, sensory information and response coordinator. Your cerebellum controls involuntary actions, refines muscle movement. And then you got your medulla oblongata, controls some of your like I forget what they call it, but where you don't have to think about it, systems. The kind of involuntary, that's the word I'm looking for, circulatory respiratory system, and also can transport signals from the spinal cord to your brain. Then we're also reproduction in vertebrata. We discussed a little bit because you have two separate male and distinct male and female sexes, but there's different kinds of reproduction. You can have internal reproduction, which is inside the female, and it can either be, they can either produce a hard shell or a live birth. If it's external reproduction, the female lays eggs first, and then they're fertilized outside of the female's body, and that's called external. Makes sense? And when in that's the case, you usually have the eggs are not hard shell. So like your fish eggs, those are external. And then there's another distinction in how the embryo actually develops. So you have 3 different ways that the embryo can develop. You have the oviparous, which are outside of its eggs, but it's outside the female's body. So that's going to go along with external. So all your oviparous embryo developments have external fertilization. The eggs are laid outside, they're fertilized, and they're hatched outside. The ovoviviparous is the eggs are actually hatched while inside the female's body. And that's kind of probably the most uncommon, I guess, where they actually produce an egg and it hatches, and the embryo develops inside. Guppies was an example they gave of that. So the babies are actually born out. Are actually live when they come out of the female. And then you have, of course, of the viviparous, which is the, oops, sorry, bear. Viviparous, which is, the viviparous is just the live birth. And of course, those are all going to have internal fertilization. So I'm sorry, for you guys who are asking questions, let's see. Let me go back. Nasa, sorry, I finally got you in. For those that just got in, I'm just reviewing the first half of module 13. So members of subline never have notochords. I think that's actually can't be correct. They do have it. It's just really, really, really early in development. So if you look on page, what is this page? 394, at least according to this book. That's kind of just a characteristic of, it's on page 4 or 393. It just says that they have it early in their development. Yes, Samuel, I wanted you to turn in the quizzes so I can just check off that you did it. But you can, if you can grade it yourself, that would be subsequently. I'll send the key to you.
Okay.
Got it?
So, yes, thank you.
Sure. Okay. Let's see. Okay. All right. So moving on. So we talked about the different kinds of embryo development in the vertebrata, and then we looked at a couple of different classes within the phylum Chordata and the subphylum Vertebrata. And again, this was the week before everything went crazy. So we looked at the class Agnatha. They have a cartilaginous endoskeleton. Includes like jawless fish, which is a weird name, but that's what they're called. And we looked at the class Chondrichthyes. I'm probably saying that wrong, but they are also cartilaginous endoskeleton and include such things as your sharks and your rays. And I'm just looking NASA right now. I'm just reviewing. So I wasn't really using the screen. So I haven't even got to the amphibians yet. So no worries. We'll go through that. We're just about there. I'm just reviewing the first half of module 13 since that'll be on the test. So, so the class Chondrichthyes is sharks, rays. They're also cartilaginous. And then we have the class Osteichthyes, which is has a bony endoskeleton. And that includes, most of your varieties of different kinds of fish. Think even the like seahorse and some of those kinds of things. And you'll want to review those basic, circulatory system of the fish, and the internal structures, because that might be on the test. So those are your bony fishes mainly. Lots of diversity, lots of wild looking fish in that group. But they're still all in that class. So that gets us to amphibians. It's another class. Again, these are all classes. So we're still in phylum Chordata, subphylum Vertebrata. Now we're down to the class. I don't know if you all remember your kingdom, phylum, class, and then you go down from there, order, and so forth. But so we're at the class level, and we're going to look at the amphibians today. Another very diverse group, pretty cool group. So as it says in the book, the amphibia are both sides, and then bio means life. So you got kind of a dual life organism here, which meaning they can operate in different environments seemingly, as opposed to all others are either water breathing or land breathing, but amphibians have that cool way they can do both. So that's what makes them amphibians. Other common characteristics, their endoskeleton is bony, not cartilaginous, all bony. They have a smooth skin with many capillaries. Now, and this is real important because this makes a big difference in respiration. So keep that in mind. They have smooth skin with many capillaries, and pigments. And smooth skin, by the way, did somebody join? I heard somebody join. No, maybe that. Okay, so the and smooth skin, by smooth skin, it doesn't mean not necessarily bumpy like toads. We know are bumpy. It means no scales. It's just saying it doesn't have scales. They have 2 pairs of limbs usually with webbed feet. They can have as many as 4 organs for respiration. They all contain a 3-chambered heart. They are all oviparous with external fertilization, and they're also all ectothermic. So we'll look at those in a little more detail. And of course, this includes your things like your frogs, and not your lizards, but your frogs, salamanders, stuff like that. So, okay, so looking at the respiration of amphibians, as I said, there were up to 4 organs. They contain gills, they all contain gills in the larval stage. So, which is kind of interesting. It's only in the larval stage. When they mature to an adult, they lose their gills. And they also have lungs, but they're generally only used as a backup. They allow, obviously, lungs allow the exchange. All these allow the exchange of oxygen and carbon dioxide, but these allow it in air. So the lungs only work in non-water, obviously. The main organ for this group is actually the skin. So that's very, very unusual. Okay, that's a cool thing. Xander said there is some salamanders that keep their gills for the whole life, and that's probably true. There's always exceptions to these generalizations. So I probably should just say, usually they at least they all have gills in their larval stage. They don't necessarily lose them. I guess that's the more proper way to say that. But a characteristic is that they all have gills at least during their larval stage. So good point. Thanks, Xander. The skin can be used as respiration because one, it is thin and it's very rich in capillaries, which that's, it has to get down to that level. The vessels have to get that thin and small, where capillaries basically are tiny, that only one cell at a time is going, they're only one cell thick, I should say, that, and that's how small they need to be to allow adequate exchange of gases. So, but what's cool is that this happens in water. So they can exchange, they can release carbon dioxide, and they can absorb oxygen through their skin in the water. So, I mean, that is just a really cool feature. But anyway, for some, that's the 90% of the respiration is accomplished this way. And then some also have the ability to exchange gases in their mouth, because again, it's very rich in capillaries. So I think they said the frog was one of those. So pretty interesting. So that is kind of really important to understand, that that's because they can do that with their skin. That's one of the main reasons they can, especially ones that don't have gills when they're adults. That's why they can spend a long, long time in the water. Okay, so for the circulatory system, in these, they have the 3-chambered heart, which is kind of weird when you think about it, because the way it works is it's constantly mixing oxygen rich with oxygen poor blood. So it has 2 atria, a left and a right, and only 1 ventricle. So there's your 3 chambers. The left atrium is actually holding oxygen rich blood that it's taking from the pulmonary vein. And curiously, the pulmonary vein, in the humans, it would just be coming from the lungs. But here it's carrying all the oxygen rich blood that it gets from any of the respiratory organs. So since the skin is a respiratory organ, and mouth can be a respiratory organ, and the lungs could be a respiratory organ, that's where the blood is coming from. And I assume if they have gills, it would be coming from there as well. So anywhere where respiration is occurring, the veins that go to the heart from there are oxygen rich, and they're going to the left atrium. The right atrium, on the other hand, uses blood that's already been used, basically. So it's oxygen poor. It's blood that was, used in the internal organs for rest, for its oxygen source. And then it sends it back from the organs to the right atrium. And it comes through the sinus venosus, is what right before the right atrium, there's a sinus venosus where all the veins come from the organs all together, and then they go into the right atrium. And then the ventricle, both atrium dump their contents into the ventricle. So you have stuff from the right atrium, which is oxygen poor, and stuff from the left atrium, which is oxygen rich, which is odd. But once it goes, then they both dump into the ventricle, and then the ventricle sends all the blood away through arteries to all the different, both, the respiration organs and the internal organs. So looking at this, it looks a lot, the way they drew it, and it looks a lot like a human heart, but there's no dividing line in the middle showing, having 2 ventricles. And so both atria dump into here. And this is the route here out. And you got some going out back to the lungs, or as we say, to the skin, to the heart. And then you have some going to the body. And they have these red, different colors, but I think that's just for general purposes. Um, that doesn't really, that's not really accurate because it's all the same. It's all partially oxygenated blood. So don't get confused by the colors. And these are all going away from the heart. So they're all arteries. They don't really show the veins, but like this is saying a pulmonary vein brings in to the right atria, no, left atrium, my bad there. And they don't have really have the right atrium, but they don't show the sinus venosus. Here it is. Sinus venosus is on this side. This is where the right atrium, the blood is collected and goes into the ventricle. Any questions on that? It can be confusing. I mean, if you just remember what each part does, don't try to put it all together necessarily, but just try to think what each part does. Left atrium collects blood from all the respiratory organs, and right atrium collects from the internal organs, and the ventricle sends it all back out everywhere. Just has one ventricle to do that. Of course, the other thing about, it's not on here, but it talks about them being ectothermic. That they're all, the temperature, they can't internally control it. It has to be, it's the external temperature, whatever the environmental temperature rather is, that's kind of their body adjusts to that temperature. So obviously if it gets very cold, if it gets too cold, they'll die. But if it just gets colder and colder, as it gets colder and colder, their body temperature will go down. Eventually it slows their metabolism enough that they actually would go into hibernation. And that is actually the definition of hibernation, is that extremely, low state of metabolism and respiration. And it's typically related to, for this class or this group, the fact that the environmental temperature has gotten so low. I guess that's why in some environments, they won't even go into hibernation. So if you're in tropical forest and temperature doesn't ever get low, these creatures just don't have a hibernating state. So now we're going to look at a few specific groups within the class Amphibia. So now we're down to orders. So we're still looking at class Amphibia, which is in subphylum Vertebrata, phylum Vertebrata. What, did I say that right? I have to keep going back to refer because, this gets phylum Chordata, my bad. So we're phylum Chordata now, subphylum Vertebrata, class Amphibia, and now we're going to look at order Caudata. We're going to look at order Caudata and order Anura. Okay. So the order Caudata is your salamanders. Very interesting group. Not lizards. They're not the same. Lizards is a whole nother, well, it's still the same subphylum, but it's a whole nother class. They are definitely not amphibian. So salamanders though are, and characteristics of salamanders is they have moist skin, which obviously that gives them a distinction from lizards. They have web feet. Most have no lungs, so 90% of the respiration is through the skin, which that kind of indicates, since for most of these, they pretty much have to spend most of their time in the water, or in some sort of water, for respiration, uh, since they don't have lungs as a backup, basically. Um, I did kind of wonder, does anybody know, Xander, maybe you know this, I don't know, is a gecko in this group? They don't really have, they have dry skin, but they look kind of like it.
A
But
gecko is closer to a lizard than a salamander.
okay, so it must not have the same,
Gecko has like a whole bunch of little tiny hairs on their feet that allows them to climb up flat walls.
yeah, yeah. Okay, okay, good call, guys. They just look a little bit more like salamander-ish, I guess. One is they're so thin. I mean they're almost see-through, and so I thought, well, maybe they're, but no, that makes sense. Okay, so they're not amphibians. So here's some cool that now they were saying that they don't have a lot of salamanders don't have a lot of pigment. I mean, they have some pigment, but they don't have a lot of bright colors, but there are some. And they also said most of them are small. So I thought that was interesting, but there are some really big ones. They said the giant salamander in Japan, I think they said it was 5 feet. You know, that's a big salamander. Oh, I don't have a picture of that one though. Here's some others that are pretty colorful. This one that says is found in New Jersey. This one here in Redwood Forest. I don't know where this one's from. It says spotted salamander. So there's quite a variety. Oops. Sorry about that. To mute my phone. So there's your class Caudata. And then, I mean your order Caudata. And then here's your order Anura. Again, still in amphibians. But this is all your frogs and toads, which make up a huge amount of the class Amphibia. Distinctions between frogs and toads. Your frogs have the smooth, shiny skin that can dry easily, more like the salamander. Basically, they must spend a great deal of time in the water. But your toads have a dry, bumpy skin, and they only return to water to reproduce. So definitely a thing to not get mixed up if you're trying to raise a toad or a frog. Make sure you have those two straight, because you drown the one, or you, I don't know, dry out the other. I don't know, but so I know we have tons of those around here. We have tons more toads here. I guess as you get obviously closer to a water pond and stuff like that, you see lots of frogs. I can hear the frogs at night, so from our ponds. Somebody just.
We got a bunch of frogs, but our cat feed them.
Yeah, the good salamander and frog and toad control, right? Does anybody have salamanders that they've seen really around their yards or houses? I guess I'm trying to think. I don't really know if I've seen many salamanders. Tons of geckos and lizards, but not so much salamanders.
There aren't as many salamanders down here, being a lot drier. But if you go farther north, like I've seen them in Arkansas, more there.
Okay. And, I'll probably be on the lookout next time I go to some place like that, because I think it'd be pretty cool to see. I guess I'm trying to think, and I can't even recall really finding them, or maybe I just didn't realize they were salamanders versus some sort of lizard. But now I know, and I'll be able to distinguish. So that's pretty cool. Okay, so frogs and toads. Here's a life cycle of a frog. It actually goes reverse. I don't know why this picture's reversed, but You have your adult frog. The female lays the eggs and they're fertilized externally. The tadpoles develop and then they hatch. So you got little, these are actually tadpoles. That's actually a frog. It's just a immature frog. And I know probably all of y'all have certainly caught tadpoles at some point, but they're in just about every pond now. You get your back legs developing and the tails eventually, this tail structure eventually recedes. And then you have a small, pretty much almost adult form of a frog that's called a froglet. And then back into your adult frog. This doesn't specifically say when they lose their gills, but at some point, tadpoles spend obviously all their time in water, so they do have gills. But the adult frogs do not. So this is one that does lose the gills. So that's what, they can come out of water, but they don't spend as much time out of water as like toads. So here's some cool pictures. This looks like a typical tree frog. I don't know if it is for sure, but seems like a familiar one I've seen around here. This is probably some sort of Amazonian one. And of course, there is those that are poisonous, have different forms of, and the same thing actually with a toad. Toad is kind of interesting because we all know, we've all seen most of us has probably seen our dog try to eat a toad and not really enjoy that experience, as they skin produces a nasty tasting, it's not really a toxin, I don't think, but it's a secretion that is really icky. Here's another cool frog, black and white. It's amazing all the pigments that actually exist in frogs.
I like his tongue.
Yeah, it's blue. Isn't that weird? And it's kind of interesting. So he has his mouth open, which could be indication that he's needing more respiration. And so that's one thing they said. If you find a frog that exerts itself, it might open its mouth to increase its respiratory capability, just like we would breathe deeper into our lungs when we're tired. So, or a dog. That's why a dog pants. Sometimes we think it's just because he's hot, but it's not. It's because that's one way they can. Well, actually, it is partly because they're hot, because that's the one way they can cool. But it's also to increase their amount of oxygen they can get. These are some interesting looking. Now, of course, those are toads. So you got your dry, bumpy skin. Don't know what kind they are though. And there's your totally cool toad. Okay, so that's actually all your module 13, the rest of module 13, all your amphibians in this section that we covered today. Be sure to go back and review all of it. You should have done the study guide. Make sure you get those marked completed and sent to Mrs. Gardner. You need to have that study guide completed for module 13. Any more on your owns for module 13, make sure you've sent completion for all the vocabulary cards for module 13. And then I already sent the module 13 test, I believe. Did anybody not get that? It was accidental. I was on the wrong module at that point, but you should already have the test. So you can go ahead and take that whenever you want this week, and it'll be due next week. The grade for it will be due next week. I'm not sure if I did send it though. Does anybody not have that? I might have sent it. Go ahead.
Are we spending 1 or 2 weeks on module 13?
This is it. This is done. We're done with module 13. We actually started it way back when.
Yeah, it's hard to remember everything. Wow.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I can barely remember that far back, but we did cover the first half before spring break. I'm not sure if you were there or not, Samuel. Some of y'all were absent.
I was absent the first week, the week before spring break.
Yeah. Okay. So that was a lot of y'all missed that. I know. I think Bear, Drew. I don't know. A couple of y'all missed that week, and so I did a brief review. If you missed the first part of this, I did a brief review of it, but hopefully if you do the study guide, you'll get a full review. And that should be sufficient to take the test. So just make sure you do that. So this will be it for module 13. So yay, guys, we only have one more module left. So while you'll have
2 weeks.
Yeah, exactly. It's like
We finished a week early.
yes. Yeah. I'm not sure how that happened exactly.
We lost a week, but we gained 2 weeks because they're not doing homeschool day at Six Flags and they're not doing the party.
Oh, okay. Okay, that's it. The party. I wasn't thinking about that because that technically we don't have a class. It's just, yep. So we'll just have to party on our own this year. So, so next week you'll have that module 13 stuff due still. I mean, just actually the test. And then you'll also have the first half of module 16 due.
Yeah, I was already reading on that, and I was like, module 13.
Yeah, sorry.
I
had to go back, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah, I totally, I don't know. I had that down and then I got myself confused looking at it, but it wasn't confusing. The thing is though, really, I wish the book was set up this way because this part of module 13 actually goes better, I think, with the next part because it's more.
With module 16?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So, but it's just arranged that way and.
Should have moved 2 plant things to the other spot.
Yeah, the plants, boy, that totally threw me off going to plants because they're so different, you know.
I don't like plants.
Well, they're kind of cool, but they're just so different. Yeah.
There's too much to memorize inside of them.
I'm a little bit inclined to be that way. Animals are just more familiar, and so it's a little bit easier, but got to know about plants too, I guess. So in biology, they're considered living. So, and it is curious that there are some things, you know, they reproduce, they produce eggs and sperm, you know, all this odd stuff that, you know, you think of only for animals that plants do. So, any other questions, thoughts? Everybody, make sure you get that work in today. The sooner the better. If you can get that done early so Miss Gardner can update the grade sheet because she's just doing that once a week. It's too much to wait for you guys to, you know, or for you guys to send each thing separately and during the week. And so she'll update all the grade book today. So check later or tomorrow check. And if you see something that's not in there, that means she didn't get it. So you either need to resend it and then she'll update it again next week. Okay. But I know I get a lot of emails, you know, with questions and stuff, understandably. So sometimes it's hard to keep up with everything and sometimes things do get lost, but just try to keep up with that as much as you can, each of you guys individually. I know it's a lot and it's been confusing, but y'all are doing great. Let's try to finish up strong and hopefully again, next year will be a little more normal. So
Yeah. Today is a little bit difficult for me. I've already had to do math, and then after this, I have to do worldview for 3 hours.
Are you guys doing that online?
Yeah.
Meeting online? Okay. Wow.
So I
So,
got a little
yeah.
bit of time in between.
Yeah, yeah, it's a little crazy. Well, next week too, for class, part of it, normally I'll do a short lecture and then there's a DVD. So I could send the link to that, uh, early, and y'all can just watch that on your own whenever it's convenient. And that way you don't have to spend in class. And I'll just do a brief lecture for the first part of module 16. So it'll be a short class today. It's a short class, and without doing labs, it's like we only need about an hour. So uh, anyway, I'll go ahead and do that. I'll send that out, and if anybody needs anything else during the week, just send me an email. So y'all have a good week, and we'll see you again next Thursday.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.